Hi, and welcome to a very special episode of the Awaken Way podcast. Why is it special? Because this one is so filled with stories and evidence about how spirit works through our lives, how our loved ones who have passed are absolutely still right here. This is one of those videos that my assistant Christy has curated from one of my monthly connection webinars, which you're all invited to join. But this one was recorded over a year ago. I want to make sure you understand that before you watch the film, because this references two conferences that I spoke at a year ago. It also talks about our Wolf's Message documentary being filmed. Well, I hope you know that the film is now available for viewing at wolfsmessage.com and on Gaia TV. But the story that comes up in this about the filming is one of the magical links that's thread throughout this episode today. So I'm sorry I can't be with you live, but I'm traveling because of Wolf's Message video. But these stories are absolutely timeless. So please enjoy with me. Some of you know that I spent 8 days in Arizona this past month for two back-to-back conferences in the same hotel, the Helping Parents Heal Conference for 1,000 shining light parents. Can you imagine? That's our word for bereaved parent, but a shining light parent is one who knows their child is their shining light, and as they come to know this, their light turns up brighter. So you would think this would be a depressing experience. Not at all. It was inspiring. That's the word I would use. And Lynette was with me the whole time, and there was far more joy and laughter than tears, which many people would not understand. But it is because they had found their peeps, right? Their tribe. They found those who understood what they'd been through, and they could see that it was okay to find joy in life again. And especially because everybody there was open to the understanding of the afterlife and that it is very real. That conference was followed by the International Association of Near-Death Studies. So about 600 people, most of whom had had either a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience. So a very different vibe, but again, people very open to mediumship, which was great for me because I gave a keynote speech at both. I usually don't do readings at conferences because gearing up for the keynote and giving the keynote and being amongst so many people takes a lot of energy, and I need that energy for when I want to do readings. But I opened myself up when I arrived and I said, Spirit, I'm here for you. If it's very clear I'm supposed to do a reading, just let me know, snag me, just make it known. And so I had a father come up to me at the HPH conference, and he said, I know you are a gold star mother. That means my stepdaughter Susan was on active duty in the military when she passed. It's a term like shining light parent. You have to educate people what it means. And he said, I'm a gold star father, and we have this pendant that I want to give to you. And he was wearing it, and he gave me one for me and one for Ty. I had never seen these before. It's a folded flag like we all receive at the funeral of our beloved service members when they pass, but with a beautiful saying on the back of it. I was so touched that he would think to not only bring one for me, but for Ty. It was so nice. And I looked down, and in that conference, all the parents were wearing a lanyard with a pin and a photo of their child on it. And I looked down, and his son was a sailor. He's in the picture in a Navy uniform. And there came this zing. It wasn't just, that's our connection as Navy people. It was a knowing, do a reading for this man and his wife. So I said, if you're up for it, we can meet somewhere during the conference and I'll do a brief reading for you. Well, he was up for that. So he said he was there with his niece, and I said, well, you can bring her too. So Lynette and I stayed outside the hotel. We rented a house for the week, an Airbnb, but I borrowed a room key from a friend and said, come to the hotel room, bring your niece, bring your wife, we'll do a reading, and bring through your son. So this is all about expectations and how the spirit world, when you're open to anything, can sometimes really surprise you. I was feeling pretty tired. This was after my keynote, but I just said to Spirit, are we good for this? They said, you got this. So met them, they sat down. Before they arrived in the room, I sensed a suicide.
when we started the reading, it was very strange because I knew we had a sudden passing. The suicide was hanging in the air, but I didn't quite feel it. It was very unusual. I started to describe the personality that I was feeling. And the niece sitting on the couch in front of me said, well, that sounds like my son. And I said, what? And I looked over and for the first time noticed she had a button with a different young man's picture on it. And I said, we have two sons in spirit here. And they both went like this. I said, let me tune in and see if I can differentiate the two. I suddenly could feel very distinct personalities. And that's how I tell them apart since I can't see the spirits. But I also knew the suicide didn't go with their sailor son. That's what I was feeling before. And I said, your son took his life, didn't he? To the niece. Yes, he did. So now that we differentiated them, the sailor pulled me over to him and said, I've been holding back. I really wanted the other young man to come through for their niece. She needs to hear from him more than my parents do. When I reported this, the dad who gave me the pendant started crying. He said, I prayed for this to happen. Oh, I got the goosebumps. He said, she really does need this more than we do. We know our son is fine. He's been gone for quite a while. She needs this. And look how it unfolded like that. I could have said, oh, don't let your niece come, just the two of you for your son. But it was so clear she was supposed to come, and their son in spirit held back so he would be the first one through. Oh, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. I will share with you two of the things that came through in that reading, just two, because they're just so cool, evidential. The one will give a bunch of you pause when you hear how personal this is, but I always ask spirits in a reading to give me a current event, something going on in their loved one's life, so you know they're really around you. They're part of your life now. And I saw the strangest thing as I'm talking to the sailor son. I said, I don't really understand this. I'm trying to feel into it, but he's showing me a roll of toilet paper. And now he's wrapping it around a hand just like this. And he says, it looks like a bandage. But now he's going, now, which is my sign for current event. And his mother on the couch goes, oh my God, this is just an example of his sense of humor. And I said, why? And she said, because I stopped in the bathroom on the way here and I wrapped the toilet paper just like that. And I looked at it and I said, this looks just like a bandage. Well, folks, so many people ask me, do our loved ones see us when we shower? And I said, well, they can, but they generally give you your privacy. So I'm a little dismayed to find out that a son would drop in on his mom in the bathroom, but the spirit said, get over it. Once you lose the body, it loses its importance, is what they tell us. And that normally they are not hanging out with you in the bathroom. But mom is so thinking about her son at this time, right? She's on her way to a reading. She's immersed in him at this conference and he's hanging out with him. So he might have just glanced. Let's hope he just glanced at the toilet paper. That was it. But what a piece of evidence that he is right here with us. So then he showed me a tattoo on a forearm, and it was the traditional anchor that sailors get, but it came with the clairsentient, claircognizance, knowing. He didn't tell me, I just knew this was from a grandfather who had a Navy tattoo like him, who was in the Navy back when that's all sailors got, was either an anchor or a girlfriend, right? Or the girlfriend's name on their arm. So I said, I know he had a grandfather, or you have a grandfather who had the Navy anchor because he was a sailor. But now he's saying no tattoo, like no tattoo for dad. But he says word for word, but if you look very closely, you'll see it. And I said, does that make sense to you? And as I said it, dad, sitting to my left, goes like this. And he holds his fist out, puts it right in my hand like this. And I said, I don't know what you're saying. He said, I was going to get a tattoo in honor of my son. So I went to get that tattoo. And the tattoo artist put one little dot on, stuck that needle in one time, and I chickened out. So if you look really, really closely, you'll see it. And here is the man's hand. He sent me a picture. Look at that dot. There's Dad's tattoo in honor of his son. I hope you all are laughing with me because that just cracks me up. What specificity of evidence. So I hope that also brings all of you hope that your loved ones, if you got a tattoo in their honor, if you did anything in their honor, they know about it. But for you mediums and mediumship students out there, that's the kind of detail you can get. And look at the layers of that. So I'm so grateful to Spirit for that one. So as we were leaving, I said, well, everybody, the test of a good reading is you leave and you say, oh my gosh, that was my loved one. And I hope you can tell that your son and your son both showed up for this reading today. And the mom said, you had me at the toilet paper. So yeah, the spirits will prove their presence. The medium doesn't have to do anything except be the intermediary, report it, and trust. So if you're trying to connect with your loved ones and you're feeling discouraged, I have shared this before in multiple venues, but I don't think I've shared this in the monthly connection webinar. If I have, forgive me and enjoy it all over again, because I shared it on the big screen at both the Helping Parents Heal conference and the IANS conference, and I just never lose the awe at how this came about. So if you're discouraged about connecting with your own loved one in meditation, anybody who has passed, just remember it took me 3 years of daily sitting in the silence saying, Susan, my stepdaughter, please reveal yourself to me. And I wasn't sensing Susan, but I sure opened up to guides and angels and other people's loved ones in the meantime. Well, I teach methods to connect, and I have lots of classes online, as you know. And one of my students reached out to me and said, Suzanne, I've had a breakthrough. So I want to share with you just a quick couple slides here as I share the rest of this story. Her name is Trisha Rivas. Trisha has a daughter, Belle, across the veil, who you see here. And she wrote to me and said, Suzanne, the breakthrough is after 1.5 years of trying to connect with my daughter, Belle, I finally sensed her in my meditation. So she cut my time in half, right? That I'm going to go back now to what I call the 3 keys to making the connection. You need to understand and believe the spirit world is real, why we spend so much time every month going over these stories. Set a very clear intention. I want to connect with you personally and through a medium if that's fine, but myself, that's the intention. And the commitment to maintain the daily effort to connect with them, if only 3 minutes a day through the sip of the divine. So here she is trying to connect with Belle, and she sensed her. But she's a really good student of mine because she remembered that when you do sense some, they don't mind if you put them to the test. And she says, Belle, tell me something going on in a loved one's life that I couldn't possibly know, so I can validate that later. So she said, tell me what your brother is doing now, a current event. And in her mind, she wrote to me, popped a picture of her brother standing in front of a white house with pillars. She saw it very clearly, but she didn't know where her son was or what he was up to. Are you ready for the breakthrough? 15 minutes after her very first absolutely real sensed it visit from her daughter Belle across the veil, her son sent her a text with a photo. Hey, Mom, my partner and I decided to go on a trip to Washington, D.C. Look where we are. And here he is, standing in front of, yes, a White House with pillars. That is absolutely what I call a breakthrough. So I was celebrating with her. Well, let's fast forward from that incident when she reached out to me to last March. I was speaking at a retreat in Sedona. It's 3 a.m, the day before my keynote speech to this group. My guides woke me up and they said, get up and add Tricia Rivas's photos to your presentation. Now, I had deliberately been told by my guides, limit the number of slides in this presentation. I only had like 18 slides. And they woke me up at 3 a.m. and said, but add the slides of Belle and add the White House picture to your presentation. Well, I have really learned to follow orders, right? The Navy military stuff doesn't go away that easily. And when I have learned, when my guides give me an order, I'm going to do it. So I got up, turned on the light, turned on my computer, found those photos, put them into slides, and inserted them where my guides showed me to put them in my keynote for the next day. So here I am. Lynette was there with me at that conference. She took this photo of me on the stage at that conference. Here I am showing the slide I just showed you with Belle up on the screen. And I'm telling people about this woman named Tricia Rivas who had a breakthrough because of her commitment and her belief and her clear intention. I hope you guys are taking notes about that. So as I'm telling this story, I notice a disturbance from the audience. You know, sometimes people will get up, they have to go to the bathroom, but this woman in the front row was really, I couldn't ignore the way she's making motion. And I looked down as if to say, what's going on here? And here's the moment when I look down and this woman is shoving her phone in my face. And she said, it's me. That's my daughter. And I couldn't believe it. I said, you are Tricia Rivas? See, she was a student of mine, but only online. I'd never met her. I'd never given her a reading. And this is the moment when the totality of what was unfolding hit me. You can see she's showing everybody in the audience the photo of her daughter to prove, yeah, that's me, that's my daughter. And I'm saying, oh my God. And I turn to the audience as I'm turning to all of you now and saying, do you understand what happened here? I was not going to tell this story, but our guides, mine and Tricia's, knew she was coming to this conference, even if I didn't. And they set all of us up for this beautiful example of how spirit knows the bigger picture than we do, how they knew she was going to be there. And this would be the most beautiful teaching point for all of us. And when you act on what you get from your guides, even if you don't realize it's coming from your guides, it may come to you as intuition, as a nudge to just do it. Keep doing it. And you will notice the beautiful setups as they unfold. This is Tricia and me in the lobby of the venue afterwards when she came up, and we just hugged again and got a real picture and just said, dude, can you believe it? She heard as she was walking into the auditorium, sit in the front row, Mom, and get my phone, my picture on your phone, get it ready. She had no way of knowing I was going to talk about her, but she followed that. This audience was full, 600 seats taken. But she walked right down 5 minutes before we start to the front row. And the guy who holds up the timing cards, 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, had draped his coat across 2 seats. And she said, may I sit there with my other daughter? And he said, yeah, have a seat. So talk about a setup. I hope that one just fills you with joy and helps you to extrapolate from that the fact that your guides really know what's coming up in your life and can give you that kind of advice. If they wake you up at 3 a.m. and say, get up and do something, as long as it's not harmful, of course, do it. That's when you'll get some of the best downloads. I use the word setup in that slide with me and Tricia Rivas, and that's my term for when it's so clear you're part of a web and connected to those across the veil, and they're helping us to know they're with us and helping us. And that whole week in Arizona was one setup after another. The flow was just phenomenal. I was really glad to have Lynette there as my witness to all of it. And she had her own moments, I'm sure. But I'm going to share with you several of those setups because it helps you be more open to this and start to see the connections and connect the dots yourself. So let's just celebrate this again. I had heard at the conference from a couple people that there was one shining light dad at the conference whose 4 children passed in one tragic incident at the same time, only 6 months prior to the conference. Ooh, how can one's heart not open when you hear that? And I said to Spirit, if that man happens to come up to me, I'll give him a reading if that feels right. All right. So here I am sitting at a lunch table, and all of a sudden a man sat down next to me, and I looked down at his button, and there were 4 little buttons, 4 buttons. And I said, oh, you're the man who had this incident. And he said, yes. And I tuned in and I said, have you had a reading with a medium? And he said, a couple. He was not overtly distraught. He had the most beautiful, peaceful energy about him. He was a sponge. He was there to learn as much as he could about the afterlife. And so I said to him, I would like to be available to give you a reading during the conference. I don't usually do that, but if you're open to that, let's exchange phone numbers and I'll just text you if an opportunity arises. And he said, okay. And we set that up. So the next day I looked at the schedule and I could see the perfect time. And I said, can we meet at such and such a time in this hotel room? Again, my friend's room, where I had already given the reading. So now I've given my keynote and I've done a reading and I am tired. But I just felt, I told Spirit I would do this and we'll do this. So I get up and I'm dragging a little and I'm heading for the hotel room. And here comes at a 90-degree angle to me, my dear friend and a wonderful medium, Lisa Wilcoxon. I've had her on my radio show before. Former student of mine, a student of Mavis Patila's, and no student anymore, man, she is a great medium. She's crossing my path, and I mean, the lobby was always full of people, 1,000 people and many mediums. You can imagine how that lobby was, and yet here she comes, and she just was lighted up in my view. I could have just said, I don't have time to talk to Lisa right now. I got to go do this reading. But Spirit lighted her up for me. It was like a super snag. And I heard, talk to her now. Well, I'm on my way. We have an appointment to talk to this guy, but I'm going to follow the instructions. So I said, Lisa, she said, hey, how you doing? I heard you gave a reading to that man with the 4 kids. And I said, I don't know where you heard that, but I'm on my way to do it now. And she said, oh, wow, I know it's going to be great because 2 of the girls have been hanging around me all morning. And all of a sudden, I got the goosebumps now. I tuned in and I said, really? And in the Navy, we have orders we carried out. We don't normally delegate everything in something big like that. But I was told, give it to her. I said, Lisa, you're supposed to do this reading. She didn't say, oh my God, or are you kidding? She went, oh, well, that explains why they're around me so much. I said, do you have time? Because he's meeting me in 10 minutes. What a testament to her commitment and her honoring the way flow works. I said, come with me. You know, I have to tell him why you're going to do it instead of me, but you're the one because I haven't felt the girls around me. And she was just like, okay. So the fact that she had the time and she passed me, total setup. So we go to the hotel room and we sit there and I get a message from him. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding the room. I'll be about 10 minutes late. And I'm thinking, no problem. I didn't tell him at this time that Lisa was going to do the reading for him. So we're sitting there and Lisa says, oh, Suzanne, your mom is here. I'm like, really? Because I don't feel my mom in that moment. See, I am really tired and I haven't felt my mom very much in the 6 years since she passed. I've gone to several mediums and they've brought through a little bit of evidence from her, but nothing earth-shattering. And I had a few encounters with my mom the first year after she passed, but not a whole lot. I know she's okay, but it's been frustrating to me. So much so that last month I reached out to another beautiful, gifted medium friend of mine, Michelle Claire, who has also been on my podcast. I said, Michelle, will you do a reading for me? She was like, a reading for you? I said, yeah, we'll exchange readings. Then I'll do a reading for you. And she said, okay. And I understand that, okay, because there's this self-imposed pressure, right? Which was silly. And we both had a really great reading, but Michelle brought through my mom. That's what I wanted. I wanted a medium to talk to my mom for me. But here I sit with Lisa and she says, your mom is here. And she right away evidence. She shows me You recently put a blanket in a basket. Yes, I did. I set up a guest room in our new summer home, and I needed something to fill in an empty spot. I bought a basket, I bought a blanket, I put it in it. I never do that. There it is. And I went, yes, I did. Hi, Mom. And she says, your mom, she's showing me a golf club. She doesn't feel like a golfer. Are you a golfer? I said, no, not really. My mom is not a golfer. Why is she showing you that? And so this is what you do, everybody. You look deeper. You feel into it. But the sitter has to feel into it as well. She said, well, it's the main golf club. It's that really big one. It's and I started laughing. I said, the driver. And she said, yes, your mother's saying, yes, the driver. Well, this is one thing that Lisa would never get. But as the sitter, I knew my mom was referencing Ty, my husband, because anybody that goes up to Ty will say, oh, do you help Suzanne in her work? And every time he says, yes, I'm the driver. It is our biggest joke. And she says, well, your mom is giving Ty a big hug, and she loved him. And she's so proud of how he supports you in this work. And then she says, but she shows me, I'm going to embarrass Ty with this one. She shows me that Ty put his t-shirt on backwards recently. And I said, like any good sitter would say, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one, because if he did, he hasn't told me, and I haven't been home in 4 days. So as soon as I left, I called Ty. Ty, did you put your shirt on backwards recently? And he said, oh, I am so embarrassed. How do you know that? He said, I realized it immediately when I looked in the mirror. I felt like an idiot. And I said, yeah, well, my mom knows about it. She brought it through as a current event in the reading. And of course, all of you who work as mediums know we get the evidence, but that then backs up and validates the messages. And the messages from my mom were the same ones that Michelle Claire sent. And they were beautiful and wonderful for me to hear. At the risk of running out of time, then she says, oh, and Rudy is here. Rudy is my long-haired red dachshund, my very first furry child. I mean, he was my baby, and he passed, several years ago, like 4 years ago. And she says, Rudy is saying he's the reason your new dog, Rusty, won't sit on your lap. This really got my attention, because I will pull Rusty on my lap now, and he immediately jumps off and sits on the side. I didn't realize Rudy is sitting on my lap and pushing Rusty away. So Rudy and I are going to have a talk, because I want Rusty on my lap. But he also says he was more cat than dog. That's what I told everybody. If you put a piece of paper on the floor, Rudy would sit on top of it. If you put an open box out to go in the trash, Rudy would crawl in it. I always said, this dog is more cat than dog. And here is my dog talking to Lisa. And all of this because I paid attention when Spirit said, talk to Lisa. She's supposed to do that reading. So that was a blessing for me. And that man had a 2.5-hour reading from Lisa Wilcoxon. 2.5 hours. She brought through each of the 4 children individually. I know I would not have had the energy to do anywhere near that kind of a reading. That was a setup. So what a blessing from Lisa, and just another indication for all of you how Spirit works with us. This is the next part that I talked about in the email that went out for tonight. Do we need healers? Are energy healers helpful to us? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, we can heal ourselves. And in my Awaken Way book, there's a whole chapter on energetic hygiene, how to raise your vibration, how to clear your energy centers when they're gunked up. I was using all the tools every day when interacting with the people at that conference, but it wasn't working. And by the end of the conference, I was depleted. I was absolutely drained. The conference was over. Lynette and I went back to our house. I knew I had to recharge over the next 3 days before the IONS conference started. And I reached out to Lisa. Spirit nudged me to reach out to Lisa Wilcoxon, because I knew she lived in Phoenix, where we were. I said, Lisa, do you know any massage therapists who also do energy work? I knew specifically what I needed: hands-on massage and energetic healing. I have really learned over the years how important we are in relation with others for a reason. Some of you, many of you in this community are called to be healers because we need you and we can't do everything for ourselves. So Lisa texted back right away and said, actually, I don't know anybody, but let me give it some thought. And then she reached out, she got right back to me. She said, there's a woman who was at the conference. Her name is Hannah Hansen. Something made me, Lisa, ask her what she does. And she said she does massages and energy work. She said, but I don't have her number. I know she lives in the area. Reach out to so-and-so and they'll give you her number. So I reached out to so-and-so, and within minutes, I have connected with Hannah. And I realized who she was. The very last person I interacted with before leaving the conference. She was a volunteer at the conference and a shining light mom herself. So I knew she was depleted. She must have been. She was working all weekend at the conference and interacting with everybody, running around with a clipboard the whole time. But I said, I could really use her help. I don't want to put you out. Is there any way you could do a session for me? She wrote back and said, how about tomorrow morning? And I'm only mobile. I'll come to you, which is a gift in itself. I didn't have to drive. She brings the table. She brings everything, the essential oils, the music and the speaker in this beautiful little room in this quiet, peaceful house. Talk about a setup. But the reason I'm sharing it with you is if you've never had a session with an energy healer, just to understand how incredibly healing it can be. She was setting up her table, and as she set up, I felt emotions welling up in me. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to cry. And I am not a crier. I mean, I'll cry in grief and if at times if something's really upsetting, but just to start crying. But I also knew how therapeutic that is. And especially when you're being worked on by an energy healer, to let it flow. It's going to carry that gunk right out of you. So she gets to working on me. And the second she walks in the room and puts her hands on me, I just started sobbing. She says, I'll be right back. She goes and she gets a box of Kleenex and sets it on the floor where I can reach for it. And the tears just flowed, which really surprised me. And the part of my human side was a little embarrassed because it wasn't just tears. I mean, I'm letting it out. She didn't say a word. And I realized how divine that was, how divine she was. Do you realize that you are the divine in human form? You don't have to be an energy healer to be energetically healing for those around you. Just a hand on a shoulder. Here I am sobbing, and that hand on me, massage, so healing, so nurturing. And nurturing is what I did not have growing up. I've realized this. And suddenly, as I'm crying, here's my mom, who I haven't felt myself since the year she died, who 2 mediums in the last month, Michelle Clare and Lisa Wilcoxon, have brought through with tremendous evidence. And she's here with me. And now I'm crying even more. Because she showed me, Susie, I didn't know how to love unconditionally, but I do now. And I realized I wasn't taught how to love unconditionally, but through my spiritual journey, I do now. And I have been asking, Mom, I'm a medium. Why don't I feel you? This is a lesson for all of you. There are reasons you don't hear from your loved one. They get to the other side, and in their own path, they learn to love unconditionally. And my mom said to me, well, now we can be present for each other. Now I can show up, because I've struggled with this. I know we are stories. We are souls living out stories. You are watching the Suzanne story. Everybody's playing roles. And I didn't want to perpetuate the Susie mom story. It didn't serve me anymore. I didn't know how to deal with my mom as I sit in meditation. To deal with her as mom that didn't nurture her, even though I love her, that would be a step backwards. So she couldn't come through till both of us got to this point where we could move forward in a more enlightened way, which is loving each other in spite of the stories. So now I'm really crying. And it was as if Hannah knew exactly where and how to touch my body or not touch my body, as I had this vivid experience with my mom. And then my mom and I both took all of the story and all of the memories, and we put them in an urn and burned them. We had a ceremony right there as I'm lying on the table, and the urn went down on the floor. And I said, Mom, what sign are you going to give me to validate all of this, even though I don't need it? It's part of the game. And she just put a little rabbit beside it. And I knew I would start seeing rabbits everywhere. And of course I did. So I think the crying's all over, right? Wrong. So then, yeah, I'll show you a slide in a minute here. Then I'm calm for a while, just thinking, oh my God, that was amazing. And then here come the tears again, as Hannah touched like little trigger points on me. And I heard collective grief. And I realized, even though I was open to everybody's energy at the Helping Parents Heal conference, there was a book signing where for a solid hour, a line of these Shining Light parents came to have their books signed. And the picture of their child was right here at face level as I sat before them signing their book. Over 100 parents, and with their child's picture right in my face. All that collective grief, even though we were all maintaining our knowing that our kids are with us, it built up. And that healing session allowed me to have this massive release. Do you see how you may need that? Again, run, don't walk, and find yourself a great healer who comes from the heart, not just a massage therapist, right? Somebody that understands energy work, or maybe not the massage. Maybe you need a different kind of energy healer. There are many types. Ask your guides, ask for a personal referral from somebody who's had a good experience. That is the best way to get any energy healer or medium, personal word of mouth. So then I thought, I was finished crying, but no. Then the third wave came, and it was simply now the joy of the perfection. I had no idea what was keeping me from my mom. I didn't know how to move forward without bringing this story with me. And through all of that web that I've shared with you, the perfection came, and that healing took place. And the perfection of letting go, the perfection of having Hannah be the perfect person for that, and an exchange of energy. I was able to give her a reading after I got back home and was rested. So she got to connect beautifully with her son. She already had in other mediums, but we all give different pieces of the puzzle. So I just want to share with you a funny picture here. That's the picture afterwards of the massage table with the Kleenexes on the floor. It's just a reminder to me that we can let down our guard. We can be vulnerable and open, and we need to be to appreciate our fullness. And when I went outside, I took a picture of Hannah's car with this sign on it. Look, I had specifically asked for somebody that did massage and energetic healing. And yes, if you're in the Arizona area, write down that number. Hannah Hansen does not have a website, but is she ever a gifted healer? So I have no problem promoting somebody on my website when I know that they are divinely gifted, as are many of you. But that was my story. So allow. And her email is danishDove, one word, @hotmail.com. danishDove@hotmail.com. Speaking of flow, an update on the Wolf's Message documentary. I believe I shared with you that we are in the midst of filming the documentary based on the story Wolf's Message. They've finished my part, and Mike and Beth Pasakarnas. They have 2 more on-location shoots to do, and then the editing will begin, hopefully finishing the documentary by the end of the year. But one of the big questions was, how do we get it out there to the world? What do you do with a documentary? Yeah, you want to get it in film festivals, but what else? What's next after the film festivals? And our filmmakers really good at making films, but really doesn't know much about documentary distribution. So I put it out to the universe. Help me get advice on this. So here we are at the Helping Parents Heal conference, and one of the keynote speakers is Anita Moorjani. Here I am at a wonderful lunch that Lynette and I enjoyed with Anita. Her story is phenomenal about her near-death experience. She was really on death's door and did die and came back to tell about it, completely healed of cancer. Well, when she walked into the restaurant, we went back the next day. We loved this place so much. Pita Jungle, if any of you know it. We went back the next day and Anita couldn't join us right away. She came in late and brought with her a friend who you see here. Her name is Dana Kosher. And she introduced herself. We said, how do you know Anita? And she said, well, she watched a documentary that I made. I'm going to come out of the screen share for a minute. She watched a documentary that I made, and we hit it off. And I'm here for the IANS conference. So she had not yet seen my keynote speech. I was going to give it the next day. And I said, oh man, we're in the midst of making a documentary. Do you think you could, we'd love to know some information on how you got it distributed. Her documentary won first place at Sedona's Illuminate Film Festival. Fantastic honor. Well, as a true testament to her heart, her big heart, she said, sure, I'll share with you. When do you want to get together? I'll share everything I learned. That is a sign of somebody that, you know, it's such a human way of being to say, well, I learned this the hard way. I'm not going to share my secrets with you. No, it's instead, can I share with you? So we arranged to meet the next day. She cleared her calendar to meet, and we went to a room in the hotel. She spent 2.5 hours giving us advice on how to make sure Wolf's message gets out to the world. But when she first stepped in the room, I cannot wait to share this one with all of you. Spirit told me a long time again, and please apply this to your life. When your heart's in the right place, things fall into place. This documentary of filming Wolf's message is flowing with so much grace and ease. And to have Dana just fall into our lap with the exact advice we needed, beautiful advice, learned the hard way about how to make sure this movie gets into the right hands, was a gift. But now you'll see the connections and the flow. She stepped into that hotel room to share her hard-earned wisdom with us. And she said, Suzanne, this morning, I watched your keynote at the IANS conference. We had met the night before. She was there, sat with Anita to watch me share my presentation with this audience. In that presentation, I shared the same slides and the incident I shared with all of you earlier tonight about Trisha Rivas's breakthrough and that setup from Spirit where they had me put the slides in. So you remember that. Notice here we have Dana, beautiful Dana here. And she said, I about fell out of my chair when you showed this slide of Trisha Rivas. Why? This is Dana and her partner. Just happened to be at the same conference in March of this year, months earlier, just happened to be present when that unfolded. She was in the audience with that Spirit setup, but just happened to walk by at the exact moment Lynette snapped this photo. I didn't know her. I never recognized it. When she told me that in the hotel room, I said, no way. She said, no. I looked up there. I said, that's me. So we opened my computer on the spot, pulled it up and said, oh my God, it really is you. When this slide says a total setup, this is a setup meant to help us get this message out to the world. So I want to get Dana Crochet's work out to the world. Run, don't walk to livewildfilms.com, I believe it is, and watch Rescued Hearts. No, that's, yeah, you can watch a preview for that. Love Heals is the one that won first place at the Sedona Film Festival. Lynette and I both watched it later that evening, and it was wonderful. We watched it the night before when we met her. It's beautiful, about healing energy and our journey. And this one, Journey Home, is another one. She and her partner are really, really talented filmmakers. I hope you can enjoy how spirit may be working in your life as well. Isn't that great?
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed hearing those stories again. You know, these kinds of things happen so often in my life now that I forget them, but they never lose the wonder. And my goal is that you will start connecting the dots in your life, ask Spirit to bring on the miracles, and you start experiencing things like this as well. I do want to tell you that watching that, I realized that Dana Crocher, the producer of the documentary that I talked about, had won at the Illuminate Film Festival. I was so impressed with her films that I recommended to you. Well, last May, our film won Director's Choice at the Illuminate Film Festival. So it's just wonderful how Spirit brings these wonderful things around and around to us, award-winning films that help us realize we are all part of something so much greater. So please go out and have a great week. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you back here next time.